The knife is a Torrent made by Reate Knives. Recently, I was talking to the owner of the knifejoker.com. He's a Spyderco dealer and a Reate dealer, and he's local to me, and I know him. And we were talking about Spydercos, and he brought up Reate Knives, and I haven't had much exposure to Reate. But he said, why don't you stop by, look at some models, and see what you think. So I said, okay. So while I was there, we were looking at a lot of models of Reates, and the Torrent caught my attention. The blade steel is RWL-34, and I haven't worked with that yet. I haven't had a chance to. So he said, why don't you review the knife? Now, I was a little bit apprehensive. I typically won't review anything unless I own it, because I'm rough on stuff in reviews. But he's an enthusiast of Reate knives, and he's very much of the opinion that they're made to last several lifetimes. So he was confident that anything I was going to do in the review, the knife would hold up to. So he said, why don't you take it, review it, sharpen it, and I'll just sell it as a used item. He was enthusiastic about wanting to see the knife put through a review, so I went ahead and said okay. Reate Knives is a production knife company out of China that uses very high quality, very high standards and very high quality materials. What you're talking about with Reate typically is overbuilt titanium frame lock flippers, ball bearing systems, that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's the neighborhood you're in when you're talking about these knives. Rather expensive knives as well. I mean, this is a $350 knife, retail. So, the titanium used in the knife, I mean, it's a machined handle. The fit and finish is outstanding. That's pretty much par for the course with Reate. They're very, very well made. There's a lot of attention to detail. The titanium used is 6AL4V. The ball bearing system is a ceramic. It's a multi-row ceramic ball bearing system. The flipping action on it is very good. It falls shut pretty easily. It's a really well built knife. It's a large knife though. I mean, a lot of Reates are fairly large in size. The weight on this is a little over 6 ounces. The blade length is 3.6, and it's 0.157 inches thick. So it's a big heavy blade. That's kind of the style of Reate knives. I mean, that's kind of the market they're going for is a market with that kind of build and demand. I wanted to put the knife through some use. I started in on cardboard just to see how it would cut. Now, it's not going to cut as well as a thin dedicated slicer, but it's not made for that. That being said, it did fine. I mean, if you wanted to carry one of these as your EDC knife, it would do fine. It would hold up fine for that. After the cardboard, I started in on a piece of wood, chewing away at it. I really wanted to push it, and I was doing a lot of twists and turns, really not taking it easy on the knife. I wanted to see if the lock would disengage or if there would be any issues with the blade, and there wasn't. It was fine. Even ergonomically, it held up fine, and I chewed away at the board until I went all the way through it, and there wasn't any issues there. After the board, I wanted to see if I could use this finger choil, if it was actually functional. I could tell just from holding the knife that if I used my the knuckle towards the end of my finger, it would be okay. I wanted to put some use to that, just chewing away at some basswood, and there wasn't any issue with that. Now, if I move farther back to, say, the second knuckle, that's where you have a problem. That's where you run into the blade a little bit, at least with hands as large as mine. But using it with the end of your finger, there really isn't a problem. I worked through the basswood a little bit with the tip. Wasn't any issue. I didn't lose any point on the tip at all. So I was interested in sharpening the knife. RWL-34 is a steel very similar to CPM 154. It's made by Damasteel, and it's named after Bob Lovelace. Um, it's it's a powdered metallurgy version of ATS-34, same as CPM 154 is a powdered metallurgy version of 154 CM. Mainly what you're talking about is chromium and a little bit of moly. Now, what's interesting with the powdered version is when they put it through the CPM process, the toughness goes way up on the steel, and depending upon what they do with the Rockwell, how hard they take the steel, it's very much argued that the edge holding can go up as well. I'm not going to test this knife. I'm not going to put it through cut tests, and I don't have it for weeks to carry it, but it held up fine through the tests. I mean, in fact, at the end of all that cutting, the knife was still shaving sharp, and that was off the factory edge. This knife is thick, and the factory angle is 45 inclusive, so 22.5 per side. So it's a big difference between that and 30 inclusive is normally where I work with stuff. But the edge did fine, and it stayed pretty sharp given the amount of cutting that I did. Given the composition of the steel, I'm kind of open to suggestion on what I want to do to sharpen it. And these are Rockwell at 61. So they could have taken it farther, but they didn't exactly go easy on it either. I mean, 61 is pretty good. But I wanted to see what kind of edge it would take, and I wasn't going to change the geometry, being that he was going to turn around and sell this knife as a used item. I mean, yeah, he'll sell it as a used item, but I didn't want to reprofile it and drop the geometry and really change the look of the knife. I needed to take the wear off the blade. I needed to bring fresh steel to the surface. So I started in on a fine diamond plate, DMT. I made 2 rotations with that, burr formation, apexing, all that. And I moved on to a 3000 grit diamond plate from Ken Schwartz. I worked with that, and I really wasn't sure where I was going to go next. I was thinking I might go to aluminum waterstones, but I ended up trying a Spyderco Ultrafine, and the edge came up almost sticky sharp off of the Ultrafine. So I decided to just follow that course, and I was really shooting for sharpness. I wasn't going for any kind of a polish on the edge, but the edge did take a degree of polish. After the Ultrafine stone, I moved on to strops, starting with a 4 micron strop on leather. I worked with that, and then moved on to a 1 micron on leather, and then a 1/4 micron on wood, and a 1/10 of a micron on wood. The edge came up beautifully. It was absolutely hair whittling sharp. I was very pleased with it. I'm very impressed with the steel. I mean, what you typically see in knives of this class is S35 VN, and I think that RWL-34 is a much better choice. I think it sharpens very well. It's going to have plenty enough stainless qualities to it, and the toughness should be fine. I think that RWL-34 was a great choice for the knife. I mean, the degree of sharpness I got it to take at 45 inclusive, because, I mean, again, I kept the geometry what it was, I was really happy with. So I think it was a great choice by Reate for the knife steel, and I think it performed really well. I would be interested to carry this for several weeks and see what happened with the edge. I would think that it would strop back to a high level of sharpness relatively easily. But again, I don't have it to carry it for weeks and weeks. But the sharpness did come up on it. It was hair whittling sharp, the length of the blade. Don't have any complaints about it there. I think that the edge that it took was great. I mean, it even mirror polished a little bit more than I expected it to. But again, this absolutely has patches where you can see the scratch pattern in it from the stones. I really wasn't interested in mirror polishing the blade. I really just wanted it a nice sharp edge on it. So I'm happy with the model. I think that Reate did a good job with it, and it was nice to get my hands on it, be able to review it, be able to put it through some use, and see that it would hold up. And I think that RWL-34 it's a really interesting knife steel. I'd be interested to work with it some more. Um, I, I mean, it really comes off like a sharpener steel. It really, I mean, given the way that this took an edge, I can only imagine how it would be at 30 inclusive on, on some different models. So I think that Reate did a good job with this, and I was glad to do the review.